The first time she said the words, it felt like the entire cafe suddenly went silent. The clinking of cups, the low hum of afternoon conversations, even the faint music playing somewhere above us seemed to fade away. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows and rested gently on the table between us, but the warmth of it couldn't soften the shock that moved through me. I have a child. 3 simple words, but they carried the weight of an entire world. For a moment, I just sat there staring at the cup of coffee in front of me, watching the thin curls of steam rise and disappear. It was strange how one sentence could instantly pull someone back into memories they had tried so hard to move beyond. Because I had a child too, and suddenly this blind date wasn't just a blind date anymore. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet ways life surprises us when we least expect it, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in hope, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel Deep Night Stories. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. The truth was, I hadn't planned to be sitting in that cafe on a bright Tuesday afternoon. My life for the past 4 years had revolved around a small apartment, a steady job, and a little boy who believed I could fix anything in the world with a screwdriver, and enough determination. His name was Orion Hale, and he was the reason I woke up every morning. 4 years earlier, my life had been very different. My wife, Marissa, had been the kind of person who made every room feel brighter just by stepping into it. She had laughter that came easily, and dreams that were always bigger than the moment we were living in. But life doesn't always move according to the dreams we make. A sudden illness, hospital rooms that smelled like antiseptic, nights spent sitting beside machines that beeped in steady rhythms, and then silence. By the time Orion was 2 years old, it was just the two of us. Being a single dad wasn't something I had ever imagined for myself. In the beginning, everything felt overwhelming. Learning how to braid a tiny ponytail when Orion's hair got long enough to tie, packing daycare lunches that wouldn't come back untouched, balancing late-night fevers with early morning meetings. There were nights when I sat on the edge of my bed after Orion had fallen asleep and wondered if I was doing any of it right. But slowly, something changed. We created our own rhythm. Mornings meant pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Evenings meant building impossible towers out of toy blocks that always collapsed into laughter. Weekends meant walks through the park, where Orion would collect rocks he believed were treasures. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for a long time, I believed that was enough. The idea of dating again had always felt distant and complicated. I wasn't just thinking about myself anymore. Anyone who entered my life would also be stepping into Orion's world. That wasn't something I could take lightly. But my sister Elara had other plans. She had been gently nudging me for months, insisting that life didn't end just because something beautiful had once been lost. "You're still young," she told me one afternoon, while Orion built a fortress of couch cushions behind us. "And Orion deserves to see you happy too." I tried to argue, but she had already signed me up for something called a community blind lunch meetup, which was how I found myself sitting across from a woman named Selene Voss in a quiet cafe on a sunny day. Selene had kind eyes, the kind that seemed to observe everything carefully before speaking. She wore a simple blue dress and had tied her dark hair loosely behind her head. There was something calm about her presence, something steady. Our conversation had started easily enough. We talked about work, about favorite books, about how strange it was to trust a stranger's matchmaking instincts. She told me she worked as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation center. I told her about my job designing structural plans for small construction projects. For the first time in years, I found myself relaxing in the presence of someone new. Then she looked down at her coffee cup for a moment, before quietly saying the words, "I have a child." And suddenly the air between us changed. But not in the way she expected. I noticed the way her shoulders tightened slightly, as if she was preparing for disappointment. Maybe she had experienced it before. Maybe people often reacted with hesitation when they heard that sentence. But instead of pulling away, I felt something unexpected. Understanding. I lifted my gaze and finally spoke. "I do too." For the first time since we sat down, Selene looked genuinely surprised. The tension that had crept into her posture softened just a little. Outside the cafe windows, the afternoon light moved slowly across the pavement. People passed by, living their own stories, unaware that two strangers inside were quietly discovering something important. We weren't just two people on a date. We were two parents carrying entire lives behind us. Over the next hour, our conversation shifted into something deeper. Selene told me about her daughter, Nova Voss, who had just turned 5. Nova loved drawing animals, hated broccoli with dramatic passion, and believed that clouds were actually giant floating islands. I told her about Orion's obsession with building things and his firm belief that one day he would design a rocket ship big enough for both of us. As we spoke, I realized something surprising. There was no awkwardness, only recognition. Two people who understood the exhaustion and wonder of raising a child alone. When the lunch ended, we stepped outside together. The sunlight felt warmer now. Before we said goodbye, Selene hesitated slightly. "There's something else you should know," she said quietly. Her voice carried a seriousness that immediately caught my attention. "My daughter's father left before she was born." She paused for a moment, before continuing, "And sometimes that makes things complicated." I nodded slowly. "Life tends to do that." We both laughed softly. Then we went our separate ways. That evening, I picked Orion up from daycare. He ran toward me with the kind of excitement that only children seem capable of. "Dad, I built a spaceship today." He grabbed my hand and immediately started explaining the design in great detail as we walked to the car. In that moment, I realized something. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something I had to carry alone. Over the next few weeks, Selene and I began meeting occasionally during the day. Always simple things. Lunch breaks, walks in the park, quick conversations that fit into the busy schedules of two working parents. There was never pressure, only a slow, steady unfolding of trust. Eventually, the day came when we decided it was time for our children to meet. It happened on a bright Saturday afternoon at a quiet playground. I remember standing there holding Orion's hand, watching as Selene approached with Nova walking beside her. Children have a way of sensing things adults often miss. For a moment, Orion and Nova simply stared at each other. Then Nova held up a crayon drawing of what looked like a purple dinosaur with wings. "Do you like dragons?" she asked. Orion's face lit up. And just like that, the two of them ran toward the swings together. Selene and I stood side by side, watching them. Neither of us said anything for a while, but the silence felt comfortable, because sometimes the most important moments in life happen quietly. Over the next year, our lives slowly intertwined. There were challenges, of course. Blending families is never simple. There were moments of jealousy, moments of confusion, moments when the children struggled to understand the changing shape of their world. But there were also moments of unexpected beauty. Orion helping Nova learn how to build block towers. Nova insisting that Selene and I both attend her school art show. Sunday mornings, where our small apartment filled with laughter and the smell of pancakes. Life had not followed the path any of us expected. But somehow it had led us here, and maybe that was enough, because sometimes the most meaningful connections come from the people who understand our struggles without needing long explanations. Before we finish this story, if it has touched your heart in any way, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in hope, and subscribe to Deep Night Stories. Stories like this remind us that even after loss, life still holds new beginnings. Years later, I would often think back to that quiet cafe and the moment Selene said those 3 simple words, "I have a child." At the time, she thought it might end the date. Instead, it became the beginning of something neither of us expected. Because sometimes the most powerful connections happen when 2 people realize they are not carrying their burdens alone. And before this story ends, I have one special request. If you believe every child deserves a home filled with kindness and patience, write the word hope in the comments below. It's a small way to remind the world that second chances matter. The truth is, life rarely unfolds in perfect plans. Sometimes it breaks your heart. Sometimes it forces you to rebuild everything you thought you knew. But every once in a while, it brings 2 strangers together on a quiet afternoon and reminds them that love doesn't always arrive the way we expect. Sometimes it arrives carrying a child's laughter, and sometimes that laughter becomes the beginning of a new family.